Welcome back to World History. Today, we're finishing up Chapter 4. Let's get into it. Okay, worth mentioning, King Tut, we have him there in 1330 BC. So is that going to be Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, or New Kingdom? New Kingdom, exactly. Now here's a quick video about King Tut.
Given that he's so globally famous now, we actually know remarkably little about Tut's life. And that's partly because his reign was cut short when he was around about the age of 19. But it's his cause of death that's become one of Egypt's most enduring mysteries. To see why his death is such a mystery, I'm heading for his tomb with Egyptologist Gail Gibson. They would have had to dig all this out.
Every bit of it, wondering every minute what was at the end.
From the moment Howard Carter entered this place, there were signs that there was something strange about Tut's death.
Why give him this?
For a start, when compared to the other tombs in the valley, this one was a lot smaller. It is surprisingly small.
It's not at all what you'd expect for a royal tomb.
No.
It is very strange, this very bare and small tomb. This was the room with the chariots and beds and boxes and all kinds of stuff.
This modest tomb was jammed full of all the royal possessions that were usually buried with a king.
It can't have been meant to be all jumbled up like that. People are just trying to cram as much stuff as possible into this small space. Shall we go down?
Yeah, let's... I can't believe we're going to do this. Another unusual thing is the decoration, or rather, lack of it. Other royal tombs are adorned in hundreds of intricate portraits of the pharaohs and the gods. By comparison, this one just doesn't look very royal. And the paintings here are interesting. Everything is on a very large scale.
Very mysterious. These are odd paintings for a king.
And lastly, on top of the paintings, something that's only recently been identified. 3,000-year-old mold.
It looks like these paintings were done on wet plaster, very fast, painted on, and then bang, bring in everything, close up the tomb very quickly. But this is still wet, and so the mold has a chance to grow, even though there's nobody here for the next 3,000 years.
So it kind of does suggest a hurried burial, perhaps. You know, caution, wet paint, never mind, we'll just seal it up anyway.
I think that's one of the best bits of evidence that it's a rush burial.
Awesome. So here's a little slide about mummies. You don't have to write all this down. The bigger picture is not how did they mummify things, but why did they mummify people? Okay? How is that different than Mesopotamia? And then why did these guys grow in different ways? Those are the questions I want you to think about as we go through this. Okay, so in Egypt, your life is pleasant, so the afterlife must be pleasant. Does that make sense? Versus Mesopotamia, your life is not as pleasant. And we know that for a variety of reasons. Both because the floods are unpredictable in Mesopotamia. And also, if you look at the different people, the different groups, Sumerians, Babylonians, Akkadians, etc., walls around their cities, we know that they're going to have more war, more battle, more turnover. And the Egyptian way of life will be just a little bit more stable. And so it makes sense for these people, if that's your life, you just sort of cast that into your afterlife, okay? Okay, the pyramids, they're the tombs for the pharaohs, but they haven't found any pharaohs in there. They think they've been robbed by graves. Hopefully you watched those videos and you learned about that. Okay, today's lesson is going to focus on this. Write this down. the land of Nubia. It's just south of Egypt. It's easy to find on a map. You see Egypt, you go down a little bit, boom, done. Okay? They have the kingdom of Kush. It's got a capital of Kermit, later Monroe. We'll talk about it. Are they friends or are they enemies? What do you think? You're right. They're both. So whatever you said, you got it right. Okay, cool. And then we'll talk about trade. We'll talk about trade with Nubia and Egypt. We'll talk about trade, Kush, and the rest of the world. But we're really also going to focus on trade in general. You know, like tenets of capitalism. Trade makes you wealthy. Understand how Egypt influenced Kush. One example, the pyramids. We'll see them. Understand trade between Egypt and Kush. Monroe is the center. Moreau, hopefully I'm pronouncing that a little better there. Moreau is center of trade. We'll talk about which each country gives, what they give to each other and how they benefit. Egypt and Kush were neighbors. Do they fight? Are they friends? They're frenemies. Okay, that depends on what time period you're talking about. Okay, there's a map. Let's look real quick. We see Egypt. You go south. See this little bend in the river, the big bend? All right, there you go. That's how you can find Kush easy. And there's Moreau. I think I said Monroe earlier. Sorry about that. Okay. Look at this. We haven't gotten here yet. This is next unit. But we're going to talk about the Silk Road. And it comes from China all the way to Europe. But check it out right here. It's connecting Kush to the rest of the world. What do they have that everybody wants? Let's find out.
Every year, the world produces some 500 million tons of iron. The history of this metal goes back thousands of years. Several ancient civilizations learned to manufacture iron, including the Hittites, whose empire thrived in what is now Turkey in around 1600 to 1200 BC. Later, the Assyrians used iron weapons during their invasion of Egypt in the 7th century BC. In the 4th century BC, the manufacture and trade of iron led to the rise of another empire, Kush, which became a powerful trading center located near the modern-day border of Egypt and Sudan in northeast Africa. Much of Kush bordered the Sahara, but the city of Meroe, in the southern part of the country, was dotted with trees. The people of Kush used this timber to fire the furnaces they used to produce iron. In addition, Meroe had a rich supply of iron ore, the mineral from which iron is made. Meroe was also located not far from the Red Sea, which gave Kush good access to the major trading centers further south. In addition to iron, the people of Kush traded gold, jewelry, pottery, and ivory. Meroe thrived for nearly 1,000 years. During that time, the Kushites developed an advanced society, adopted some Roman-style architecture, and developed their own written language. The Kush Empire also gave women more political power than did most other ancient empires. In fact, several Kush monarchs were women. But just as iron had an impact on the rise of Kush, it also had an effect on its fall. Meroe's economy began to suffer during the 4th century AD. One reason for the decline may have been the loss of forests in Nubia, where trees were harvested to fuel the iron industry. In about AD 350, the neighboring kingdom of Aksum invaded Kush, and the Kush Empire fell. Today, Kush is largely forgotten, but the metal that helped build the empire is still important in all our lives today.
All right, so check out, not only when you trade, okay, so when you trade items, both countries get more wealth, okay? But when you trade items, you also indirectly are trading technologies and ideas. And so trade is going to spur, you know, intellectual expansion, things like that. These little deeper concepts. But check out these pyramids.
The steep, small pyramids rise over the desert hills, a stunning reminder of the ancient Nubian kingdom that once ruled Egypt. But the crowds that swarm around Giza's famous sites are absent here. Some 200 kilometers north of Sudan's capital Khartoum, the pyramids at Meroe are deserted despite being a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The site is known as the Island of Meroe because an ancient long-dried river once ran around it. It had served as the principal residence of the rulers of the Kush kingdom, known as the Black Pharaohs. Their pyramids, ranging from 20 feet to 100 feet tall, are some 4,600 years old, smaller and steeper than Egyptian pyramids.
These pyramids are different than the pharaonic pyramids, where the amount of pyramids that are present in Sudan is bigger than the pyramids in Egypt. There are in excess of 300 pyramids in Sudan, and they're all present in Kuru, Nuri, Jabal al-Barkal, and in Barjawiya.
The pyramids bear decorative elements from the cultures of pharaonic Egypt, Greece and Rome, according to UNESCO. It makes them priceless relics. However, over-eager archaeologists in the 19th centuries tore away the tops of some pyramids for their golden tips, reducing some to rubble. President Omar al-Bashir's government, which came to power following a bloodless coup in 1989, has struggled to care for its antiquities.
The sanctions affected the archaeological side because there is less technical support in terms of protection and restoration, especially coming from American institutions. But lately, there has been a shift or growth in the number of American research groups that work in archaeology. From the University of California, Santa Barbara, the University of Arizona, and Purdue University. They're now working on excavations around Sudan.
Oil-rich Qatar has pledged $135 million to renovate and support the country's antiquities programs in the last few years. But that would not be enough, according to Omar. He says the lifting of sanctions is the only way forward for tourism in the country. Artul Shimal is one of the few tourists visiting the site.
We want to see the old culture, the culture before. Our culture was so small, and here they have a very big culture before more than 2,000 years.
With its pyramids, Meroe is a monument to the intertwined history of Egypt and Sudan. Egypt ruled what is now Sudan for 5 centuries. Meroe was flourishing as the center of an African kingdom by about 400 BC. Susan Mungeli, CCTV.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the rise of Kermit. I'm sorry, I got a little typo on there. Rise of Kerma. Okay, Kerma. Okay, again, this is the original. Kerma's the original capital of Kush, and then later it becomes Meroe. Just know where Kush is on the map, south of Egypt. You'll be fine. Let's look at this timeline and just look at a couple of things that line up. So you have Kerma established as the capital. Okay, that's going to match up here with the first intermediate period, so kind of after the Old Kingdom. Then over here you've got Nubian kings conquer Egypt, and that's going to be after New Kingdom. That's going to be on the decline of Egypt. And geographically, what protects Egypt? The desert and Nile cataracts, right? And so it protects Egypt, but it also protects Kush, because you can't get armies to go up and down the Nile fast and effectively. Remember Queen Hatshepsut? Hold on, let me try it again. Hatshepsut. Did I do good? I don't know. Did better than I did last time. Okay. Egypt needs wood. They don't have a lot of wood, but they have paper, they have copper, they have other things, they have stone. Okay, they have lots of food. And Egypt's going to trade, and they're going to get wood and things like that. They're going to trade with Kush for iron, for slaves, for ebony, which is just a hard wood. And then these guys export stuff. Remember that Silk Road chart? They export around the world all the way to China. Export is, it's exiting, okay? You're selling. Import, it's coming in. You're importing, you're taking it in, you're buying, okay? Import, export. Good vocab to know. Hold on real quick. There's an arrow near iron. Oh, the arrow got bigger. Oh, it's so big, it's off the page. Okay, you must need to know that one of the main Kush exports is iron. What's one of the main exports from Kush? Iron. Good job. All right, let's take a look at this chart, graph, illustration. One thing I don't like about it, tell me something that's wrong real quick. What's wrong with this? Okay, you've got gold for the gold, but then you've got this silver color for the iron. I don't know about that. I don't really like that, but I just hope you notice that. Okay, but they have iron, they have gold, they have resources. They're going to trade. They're going to be a global trading partner with people. Okay, so Kush is conquered by Egypt. They see that Kush is getting more powerful. They start to see them as a threat. And so then they're going to conquer them. After the new kingdom ends, they're going to be pushed out by the Assyrian. Okay, let's talk about the decline of Kush. The cows eat the grass too much. They eat too much. They overgraze, right? And then the soil kind of gets loose and you can't produce as much food. That's one theory, or that's part. It's not necessarily like different theories. They all come together and they all cause this. The other one is you had wood, but you were trading it. You used your wood to make this iron. Eventually, you run out of wood. You can't make iron. All those people you thought were your friends, they weren't your friends. They just wanted your iron to trade with. And so when you run out of iron, you run out of friends, okay? Here's the big picture. This is what we've learned about so far, okay? Because we've gone from your hunting and grazing to your living in cities to having these civilizations, okay? With specialization, okay, comes class separation. When we're a hunter and gatherer, everybody's equal. I hunt, you gather, I hunt, we're all the same. But now you've got worker and guy in charge of the worker. You've got a priest, you've got an architect, you've got a farmer. And these guys, the hierarchy that separates based upon your job, how society starts to look at you. You start to see hierarchies of gender. Again, hunter-gatherer, farmer, women and men, much more equal in a lot of Native American societies, even into modern day. The women's line, it was a maternal society. We have the rise of a state system. You need accounting. How do you keep track of what you have? Who's paying taxes? You need writing to make that happen. You need laws. So that way you're not just making these laws up. You need written laws. Give me an example of a written law code. First one, Mesopotamia. Hammurabi's Code. Okay, good job.
Excellent.
Okay, you've got pharaohs and kings, people that rule, things like that. Lasting contributions, you could come up with a bunch of different ones. Obviously the wheels, some of these buildings, alphabet, things like that. In Egypt, what is an example of monumental architecture? Exactly, the pyramids, an obelisk, anything you wanted to say, one of the temples, okay? What's their writing called? Hieroglyphics. How do we read hieroglyphics? Rosetta Stone. Bingo. Okay, good job. In Mesopotamia, give me an example of monumental architecture. Okay, ziggurat. Perfect. What's their writing called? For Sumerians, it's cuneiform. Remember that tablet? Now let's talk about trade. What's an import? Okay, you're buying something. What's an export? You're selling it. Okay, import, export. How does trade impact Kush and Egypt? They both get things that they didn't have. They both get more wealth. Does that make sense? Okay, so I have meat. That's good. You have vegetables. That's good. But if we trade, then we have a better diet. Does that make sense? Okay, so trade usually benefits both parties, or you wouldn't trade. So trade creates wealth. Ideas and products. When you trade these products, you also usually talk and trade religions and trade ideas, trade technologies. These things you should keep in mind as well. Okay, Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, New Kingdom. We're looking at Egypt. It's a little bit of a review. Here are the dates. Okay, talking 5,000 years ago, moving up to around 3,000 years ago, give or take. Could you put this stuff, if you had to label this is a hard question. What about Sumerian society? What about Babylon? What about the Hittites? How would this match up? Take a second, take a look at that. How would you match that up?
Still much to learn, you have.
Okay. By the way, I can't play Jeopardy music too long. YouTube will cut it out. So here's how that lines up. Okay? Sumer, you got Sumer in the Old Kingdom, Sargon, Old Kingdom. You know, Babylon and Hammurabi's Code, that's almost later, that's later Middle Kingdom. The Hittites and the Assyrians are in the New Kingdom. Remember, what's the most powerful pharaoh, or the pharaoh that reigns during the height of Egyptian power? Ramses the Great. And remember, he fights the Hittites to the draw. So now you can see kind of where the Hittites are and where Ramses is in the New Kingdom. I hope that this little graph helps kind of all our friends and all the stuff we've been learning about kind of matches it up on the timeline. Would I ask you this on the test? No way. No way. I just want you to kind of get an understanding of these things. I would ask you something along the lines of like, when were the pyramids built? Old Kingdom. Okay, great. When was the height of Egyptian power? New Kingdom. Okay, cool. That's fine. So there we go. That's it. That's Unit 2 in a nutshell. You've got these videos to watch again and again. If you need help, I posted the study guide. We'll play Jeopardy next time, and then the test will be the following class period. So start studying now and do your best. Take care.